Tonight on Reporting Scotland.
Yes, 93, no, 30.
MSPs vote to withhold the Scottish Parliament's consent for the EU withdrawal bill at Westminster. Are patients and healthcare providers making adequate plans for end-of-life care? A leading cancer charity says not enough is being done.
We sorted out wills, we sorted out power of attorney, we sorted out Paul's funeral. We know that those things are in place and that if and when whatever happens, I know what to do.
We'll be hearing more about planning and living with a terminal diagnosis. Also on the programme. Unemployment is down here amid signs the pay squeeze could be coming to an end. Looking ahead to the Scottish Cup final, it's over a quarter of a century since Motherwell last won the Cup. Can they beat Celtic on Saturday? And a memorial in Edinburgh dedicated to conscientious objectors and opponents of war moves a step closer. Good evening. MSPs have voted overwhelmingly to refuse consent to the main Brexit bill at Westminster. The cross-party objection was that the EU withdrawal bill cut across Holyrood's powers. Only the Tories disagreed with that. They accused SNP ministers of stirring up trouble to push independence. This from our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Close to home, Holyrood's own shop provides an example of why this dispute over powers matters.
Most simply, what does it all mean for a tin of Scottish shortbread or perhaps a jar of Dundee orange marmalade? Currently, rules on food safety standards and labelling, that's the information you'll find on a product, well, they all come under the EU. But after Brexit, of course, those powers will return home. Scotland already has its own food standards system, but UK ministers say they need to keep charge of those powers for up to 7 years to guarantee that there will be common rules, common regulations across the United Kingdom as a whole. Otherwise, they say, a huge multi-billion pound business could face unnecessary and unwanted obstacles.
And it's not just food. We're talking about the regulation of chemicals, mutual recognition of professional qualifications, and public procurement of goods and services, itself a huge business. Scottish Cabinet ministers meeting today say they're happy to agree UK rules, but stress that has to be by consent, not diktat. They voice their frustration and say UK ministers aren't listening.
The actions of the UK government, were they to impose legislation on this Parliament, would be serious and unprecedented, and they would be noted here and across Europe. If there is a failure after today's vote to adapt the bill to devolution, it will be the UK that will be breaking trust and breaking the rules, not us.
But the Tories said the contested powers currently resided in Brussels and the majority of them would return to Holyrood. They urged compromise.
The fact is that the Welsh Government have compromised, the United Kingdom Government have compromised, and the only government that hasn't compromised is the Scottish Government. That's the reality.
Call Neil Findlay to open for the Labour Party.
But Labour said the Tories had their priorities wrong.
We've defended devolution at every turn, from every attack, from wherever it has come. And now we seek to strengthen it as we take post-Brexit powers.
And the Greens backed that stance.
Those who worked together to create this place must now unite to stop the demolition squad led by Ruth Davidson and Theresa May.
Brexit's still on track.
In London today, UK cabinet ministers sought to resolve their differences over Brexit. The Liberal Democrats said that conflict meant Scotland was being overlooked.
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are an irrelevance to London, not because the Tories have given up on being unionists, no, of course not, but because a fight to the death over Europe trumps everything else.
In the vote, only the Tories resisted the line advanced by Scottish ministers.
Yes, 93, no, 30. There were no abstentions. The motion as amended is therefore agreed.
Which means no agreement with the UK government.
I'm disappointed about today's vote. Our objective remains to get agreement with the Scottish Government, and we will continue to work to achieve that. I still think that's the best way for both governments and for the people of Scotland. Obviously, the bill will continue its passage.
Trade needs certainty, but tonight the warp and weft of political argument still prevails.
So, what difference will that vote make? Well, to try to answer it, I'm joined by Brian Taylor, who's at Holyrood, and from Westminster by Nick Ardley. First, Brian, what happens now?
Jackie, this is about farming, it's about fishing, it's about food, but it's also about the fundamentals of devolution. Mike Russell, when he was making his speech, was at pains to quote the likes of Donald Dewar and Jack McConnell to stress that this is about, in his view, defending devolution, not about pursuing the cause of independence. And it should be borne in mind, of course, that he was supported in that by the Labour Party, by the Liberal Democrats and by the Greens. The Tories indeed were isolated in tonight's vote. But there is another fundamental of devolution to bear in mind, which is that Westminster remains sovereign. Westminster can. You heard the Secretary of State, Westminster will continue with the EU withdrawal bill. Now, UK ministers will still, even at this very, very late stage in the process, try to seek a deal. They say they are open to that idea. But if a deal is not possible, then Westminster will be ending up legislating without the consent of the Scottish Parliament behind me here. And that really would create a constitutional conflict.
Nick Ardley at Westminster. Will this vote at Holyrood have any impact on the UK government's plans?
I suspect it will have very little practical impact, Jackie. Yes, UK ministers still want agreement. Yes, they will continue to try and reach it. But as Brian says, ultimately they know they can impose this. And it's worth seeing this in the context of what else is going on here and the gargantuan amount of work that the UK government and Whitehall have to do. The UK government is still split on customs. We learn tonight that next month they will publish a white paper with more details, but there are other hurdles to negotiate too. And all the while, Theresa May has her pro-Brexit backbenchers in her ear telling her, get on with it. So I suspect that is what they will do with the withdrawal bill. It's due in the Lords tomorrow, it's due in the Commons next month. That provides a small window of opportunity for the UK and Scottish governments to keep talking. But it's very hard to see what could be suggested now that hasn't been suggested over the last few months. So does this matter in political terms? Absolutely. Does it take us into new territory for devolution? Yes, it does. Will it delay or ultimately derail Brexit plans? I wouldn't bet on it.
Nick, thank you very much. And to Brian too. People facing terminal cancer are being urged to talk about their condition and plan their end-of-life care. The call comes from one of the biggest cancer charities whose research suggests too often cancer patients and professionals don't communicate and don't discuss the support available. Our health correspondent Lisa Summers met a couple who are living with a terminal diagnosis.
Yeah, what a lovely day.
Meet Paul Mysack, his wife Bridget and the dog Babushka. They really are living life in the moment. And Paul sat down to talk to me about life and death.
I was given a year to live, and I was aware with Bridget, my wife, who would only been married for 2 years, was that if we didn't embrace every day, we're dead already. So we decided to embrace every day, and 1 year on, I should be dead now, but I'm still alive, and we've created all these memories, which is fantastic. So
there have been tough moments, but Paul says having open and honest conversations with medical staff has made a huge difference.
Pain brings you down, but I can say without fear of contradiction that there are systems in place for you to get pain management, palliative care, that means you do not have to have black days before you pass. The systems are out there. You just have to look for them.
Today's report by Macmillan found in many cases those early and vital conversations were not happening.
I think if we are in a position that we are able to respond to what the wishes and needs are of that patient dying of cancer, and also in terms of their family members, that would help to reach a point of having a good death.
Back in Cumbernauld, and Bridget says it doesn't have to be hard, it just has to happen.
I'll have the dog ball. That's fine, thank you, my love.
We sorted out wills, we sorted out power of attorney, we sorted out Paul's funeral. And they're all now in a box on the shelf upstairs. And it's not something we need to talk about every day, but we know that those things are in place and that if and when whatever happens, happens, I know what to do. I don't need to be panicking and fretting about what Paul wanted because I know, and it's upstairs in a box for whenever that day is.
People ask me, what do you think's at the end? I don't know what's at the end.
And some further words of wisdom from Paul.
Open up. Do not be a closed book, because if you're a closed book, It's a lonely walk and it's a dark walk. When you open up to other people, they'll light the way for you, and it's a much easier journey.
Lisa Summers, reporting Scotland, Cumbernauld.
Unemployment has fallen in Scotland. The number of people out of work was down by 6,000 at the start of the year. And there are signs the year-long pay squeeze could be coming to an end. Well, our business correspondent David Henderson with me. Jobs first, David. How's the market looking?
Well, unemployment is low and it seems to be staying low. At the start of the year, 118,000 people in Scotland were out of work and looking for a job. That's 2,000 lower than at the same time last year. When it comes to that other key benchmark, it's clear Scotland has high levels of employment. In fact, almost 3/4 of the Scottish population of working age now have a job of some sort. Very high levels. And compared with a year ago, well, there are 10,000 more people in work than were working then. Here's another good sign. Youth unemployment has hit a record low. It's still a point of concern, of course, but it's down to less than half of where it stood 5 years ago. So while the economy is barely growing, there's still some signs of real strength in Scotland's jobs market.
And what about signs the pay squeeze is coming to an end?
Yeah, it's been a tough year for many workers. Inflation has been rising. That's put a squeeze on wages. So many people see their take-home pay fall in real terms. It's put a real pressure on household budgets, and many of us have had to make do with less money in our pockets. Now, though, we may have turned a corner. Average wages rose above inflation at the start of this year. So that's a good sign. But looking long term, average wages are still much lower than they were even 10 years ago before the financial crisis. So it'll take quite some time, I think, for people to really notice an improvement.
David, thank you. A further hearing date has been set in the extradition case of former Catalan Education Minister Clara Ponsatí. The St Andrews professor is wanted in Spain for her part in October's referendum. She's due to return to court on the 12th of June with a full extradition hearing in the summer. Professor Ponsatí is contesting the extradition and denies the charges. Police Scotland's armed response vehicle officers have attended more than 80 incidents to help vulnerable people since their roles were extended earlier this month. In December, Police Scotland confirmed the officers would be used in a wider range of incidents with an emphasis on public protection. That has included missing persons and road traffic accidents. The father of a Syrian refugee stabbed in an alleged racially motivated attack claims he's facing being discharged into filthy housing. 25-year-old Shahbaz Ali remains seriously ill in hospital. Edinburgh Council argues it's gone above and beyond to help. You may find some of the images in Maura Kinniburgh's report distressing.
Shahbaz Ali was stabbed 2 weeks ago in an alleged race-hate assault. A 17-year-old's been charged with attempted murder.
I think Shahbaz is died.
His father wanted to clean and furnish the temporary council house so it's safe for his son to recover, but he was prevented by rules.
They said, no, we can't give you a key because your son have to come and sign the agreement. He said, oh, my son, they can't walking, they can't sit, how they can come in here? Please, can you give with me with an hospital? Maybe they signed there. They refused, said, no, we can't give you.
The case has touched the hearts of many. Both father and son had jobs here. They said they wanted to make the place clean and safe as the doctors had ordered. The housing charity says the case highlights Scotland's housing problems.
The institutional response is so lacking in humanity that people can't move forward by themselves. They can't go away and clean a flat and get the furniture ready so that they can bring their loved ones home and recuperate. It's not just this case, it's a case of people not being able to just get on with their lives and being assistant. Nobody's asking for a handout. They're in a vulnerable position. Give them the help so they can do everything themselves.
Edinburgh Council stresses it is helping the family.
Having visited the property, it is clean, it is in a livable state. We have made sure that access is addressed, so tomorrow, for example, the family will have access to enter the property, even though there'll be carpets being replaced. At the time, they will be able to go in and do the finishing touches that they're looking to do.
Mr Ali returns to the flat tomorrow in the hope his son will soon be able to rebuild his life there. Maura Kinniburgh, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
It's 17 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's main story. MSPs have voted to withhold consent for the EU withdrawal bill at Westminster. All parties at Holyrood, except the Conservatives, believe the current proposals would undermine the Scottish Parliament. And still to come, Motherwell limber up for the Scottish Cup final against Celtic on Saturday. The underdogs aim to go to Hampden on the front foot. Last month, you might remember, Hollywood actor Michael Sheen was in Scotland to launch a campaign against payday lending. Well, today, he was back to lend his support to a community bank in Leith. An example, he says, of the kind of fairer alternative desperately needed by those at risk of exploitation. Stephen Godden went along to meet him.
I spend most of my time here at Leith now. It's my second time in a few months.
I'll see, come in if you can get
Yeah, there's not a lot of room. I wanted to lend my voice to support what credit unions are doing all around the country, but especially here in Leith as well, giving people a fairer deal, giving them more options, and making sure that local economies like this, money can stay within the economy instead of being taken out. I want you to officially declare this new branch as open. In a lot of communities like Leith, like the community that I come from in the South Wales Valleys as well, you get a lot of businesses that open up in order to really exploit communities, and we need to make sure that people know that there are other alternatives, fairer, more responsible alternatives. And you go and talk to people, and you'll find that they'll work with you to find out what's best for you.
The reason we're here, put simply, is because you're here.
Yeah.
Does it tell you a lot about the power of celebrity and what you can do?
Yeah, it's what I realised, that one of the things that I can do, one of the resources I have to offer is exactly this, that I can turn up somewhere like this, a great project, something that's really trying to help people, and by me being here, you come along, I speak down there, and then the people who are there get to hear about it. Simple as that, isn't it? Job done. Job on, job done.
The BBC has announced that its dedicated TV channel for Scotland will go live in February next year. It had initially been planned to start broadcasting this autumn. It follows last month's decision by Ofcom to give the provisional go-ahead for the new channel. Food Standards Scotland has ordered the recall of a brand of haggis pakora from shops over fears it may contain shreds of polythene. The Edinburgh-based company, Mrs. Eunice Spicy Food, says its 200-gram packs with a use-by date of the 19th of May 2018 are affected. Customers can get a full refund. A major clean-up operation is underway after parts of a Glasgow park were left in a mess by so-called sunshine ravers. The impromptu event took place yesterday after a weekend of good weather across Scotland. Local people complained on social media about the scale of rubbish, including bottles, bags, food waste and discarded barbecues. Football now. And ahead of Saturday's Scottish Cup final against Celtic, Motherwell players say it would be a genuine dream to lift the trophy for only the third time in the Lanarkshire club's history. It's over a quarter of a century since the Steelmen last won the cup. And as Cerdan Idsan reports, parts of the town are already claret and amber.
They want to have their cake and eat it too. The Motherwell window dressing, an indication the town's preparing for a party.
It is the magnificent 7 for Celtic.
They've just had one at Celtic. The league title, their 5th consecutive domestic trophy since manager Brendan Rodgers arrived in the summer of 2016. So can Motherwell stop them making more history?
We can cope with whatever challenge is put in front of us. So Saturday is that final challenge, and we're confident we can go there and we can take the trophy home.
Even the team chasing the double treble, you can beat them?
Yeah, we don't care about that. We're not interested in double trebles, we're interested in Motherwell lifting the trophy.
It's one of Scotland's oldest clubs, founded 132 years ago in 1886. And in all that time, only 2 Motherwell teams have ever won the Scottish Cup. So this class of 2018 now has a chance to write its own chapter in Fir Park history.
It would genuinely be a dream come true if I could lift that trophy in front of the Motherwell fans, because you dream of going to cup finals, things like that, but never ever in your wildest dreams you imagine lifting a trophy in Motherwell. But if you can do it, honestly, it'd be a dream, genuine dream.
Some supporters are already winners, voted best shopfront amid cup final fever.
Definitely, as you can feel the difference, the atmosphere is completely different altogether. Yeah.
The street's been very busy.
everybody's stopping, having a wee look in the window, coming in and buying the cake. So it's good for us as well. It's good business.
Will you be saying a little prayer for Motherwell perhaps this weekend?
I will say a prayer, definitely. Definitely I will, yes. Yeah.
Why is that?
Oh, well, I think they deserve it. They deserve to get on.
Well, it's a moment these Motherwell supporters have waited 39 years to see.
The 1991 Cup winners are still revered in the town to this day. The current vintage know they're just one match away from securing their own place in Motherwell folklore. Kerry Nidsan, reporting Scotland.
The Hibs manager, Neil Lennon, has been issued with a notice of complaint from the SFA following his celebrations during the weekend match against Rangers at Easter Road. Lennon ran onto the pitch after the late equaliser that secured his side a 5-each draw. He has now been charged with misconduct and could face a touchline ban for the start of the season. Meanwhile, Rangers have been charged by the Scottish FA with alleged rule breaches dating back to 2010 that could see them face a heavy fine or even ejection from future cup competitions. It relates to the granting of a licence to play in European competitions between 2010 and 2012. Rules state clubs can't compete if they have payments overdue to the tax authorities. Rangers insist they did nothing wrong and claim the charges are driven by individuals intent on harming the club. Millions of soldiers died in the First World War, but those who refused to fight on religious or moral grounds were often harshly treated. Well, now plans for a memorial in Edinburgh's Princes Street Gardens to those conscientious objectors has moved a step closer, and the group behind it hope it will become a reality in time for the 100th anniversary of the end of the war. Gillian Sharp reports.
In the shadow of Edinburgh Castle, campaigners hope by next year a memorial will stand to those who've opposed war. A reminder in a public place, they say, of a lesser-known part in Scotland's history. During World War I, the public mood was not sympathetic. These men, for instance, were sent to a camp in Dice.
Ostracised in the community and, I think, vilified to an extent.
Elizabeth Allen's grandfather, John Searson, was a conscientious objector during the First World War. Dismissed from his job as a librarian, he was sent to shovel coal.
For many of them, this was a life commitment. And so the notion that they were avoiding being called up to save their skin was actually not true. They had heard a different drum, they were following a different path.
The dove or handkerchief tree, the starting point for the design of the memorial. The plan is to cast it in bronze, but on a very human scale. Each of the handkerchiefs will have something different to say about peace or opposition to war.
I chose to do this slightly more unconventional design because being a conscientious objector is such a personal choice, and I wanted to create a design that was equally personal and intimate, but also represented how they were making a different decision and they were going against the mainstream.
The gardens already have a number of war memorials. Campaigners want this one to tell a different part of the story.
The people who died in war are well represented with memorials, as they should be. But the voices of opposition to war are practically invisible.
Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, now let's see what the weather has in store for us from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there, good evening to you. Well, there was some lovely sunshine around today for some of us. This from our weather watcher Mimi and Maud. But you'll notice on the satellite picture where we've had the sunny skies, 21 degrees, yes, but the clouds streaming its way eastwards with outbreaks of rain. So if you're under the cloud today, a very different story. This from the Isle of Skye, some drizzle in the air too. That was today. The week ahead looks all right, actually. High pressure sat overhead, keeping all this cloud and weather fronts at bay, keeping us dry, some sunshine, but at times weather fronts perhaps just grazing the northwest. So let's take a look at the forecast for the next few hours. There's today's weather front clearing away, taking any rain with it. It's then dry and clear overnight. Quite chilly at times, actually. Town and city temperatures 3 to 5 Celsius. In the countryside, perhaps a touch of frost, and winds generally light to moderate from the northwest. So tomorrow, it's a dry start, but a chilly start at dawn. Plenty of sunshine, though, and that with us throughout the course of the day. So dry and fine as we go through towards the afternoon, with little, if anything, in the way of wind. Temperatures by mid-afternoon in the southwest, 16 or 17 Celsius, but actually the air mass that we're in tomorrow is just a little bit cooler than today. So for eastern Scotland, not the 21 we had today, more like 12 or 13. That'll be a big difference for you. Elsewhere, similar temperatures to what we've had today under that cloud, but with some sunshine tomorrow, should feel better. Winds light as well, coming in from the west-northwest. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, well, again, little change. It's dry, some lovely spells of evening sunshine. Looking ahead, and we'll spot the difference. This is Thursday, another dry and fine day with high pressure overhead, some spells of sunshine, variable cloud, and temperatures once again around about the mid-teens and winds light. Looking ahead to Friday, well, another dry and fine day for most of us, but there's one of those weather fronts just brushing the northwest, so some thicker cloud for the Western Isles at times, perhaps the odd shower too. And there it is on Friday, that weather front brushing the northwest, clearing away to leave Saturday with high pressure still overhead, dry and fine. And big day on Saturday, Cup final. So dry and fine is the forecast, some spells of sunshine, 17 or 18 degrees, and coverage across the BBC. So Saturday's looking good, Sunday not bad either. The whole weekend really dry, bright, some sunshine, cloudy though at times in the northwest. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. MSPs have voted overwhelmingly to withhold consent for the EU withdrawal bill at Westminster. The UK government argues it should temporarily have the last word on some devolved powers after Brexit to ensure consistency across the UK. And it's still unclear whether Meghan Markle's father will attend her wedding to Prince Harry on Saturday, with the latest reports saying he now wants to walk his daughter down the aisle. And that's Reporting Scotland. Our next main news, 10:30. From all the team, good evening.